All right, guys, this is Motor Racing Podcast. It is Thursday. Don, I know we haven't done a couple episodes this week with everybody's schedule, buddy, but how you been?
Man, I'm doing so good. I'm so excited that it's already Thursday because we've already got, this weekend's racing to look forward to, but we got quite a bit to cover from last weekend. So let's get after it, man.
I mean, I hear you. And so we'll just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room and talk about this now because it's everywhere. It's on
I
race.
know it's eating on you.
I know it's on Facebook. It's on Instagram, and it's. I got to talk to somebody and talk about it to see, But Kyle Larson and this waiver, I guess I don't know if they're just calling it a regular waiver or if they're trying to induce a medical waiver like they did with Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch. Um, man, there's a Joey Logano said it best earlier this week. Man, there's with this waiver rule, it used to be black and white,
Right.
clear as day, and now there's so much gray area with this waiver and the rule that surrounds it, and it's confusing to not only the drivers and the race teams, but us as fans because NASCAR puts out one rule and says this, and then we get to a situation where that rule needs to be applied, and then it's like the rules flipped, twisted, upside down, opened up, and it's to me, I don't want to say NASCAR has favorites, but let's be real here. I think nowadays, I think NASCAR has favorites.
Do you think it's fair to say that NASCAR has favorites because their favorites are bringing in the most attention? They're bringing in the most.
It's their money getters.
The money getters. Kyle Larson is an incredibly talented and incredibly gifted racer. He's done a lot for NASCAR already in the 10 years he's been in the sport. He's done tons for other sports across America. Now jumping to IndyCar in his first ever race, he won Rookie of the Year honors there for the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year, not Indy Rookie of the Year. I think NASCAR almost was forced into this. I don't think they were expecting rain to create all this chaos throughout the weekend, right? That same band of storms ran across Indianapolis Motor Speedway, delayed that race by 4 hours, which is really interesting because they still had massive viewership throughout the rain delay and into the race. So hats off to Indy for everything they did. I know a lot of people were saying they think it's because Kyle Larson was a part of the show, and that's why so many people stayed focused in on it. But to get back on the actual subject of the waiver and Kyle Larson and NASCAR playing favorites, look, you got to make a decision. It's a business. I'm going to commend NASCAR for making decisions and standing by them, right? Like they're like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to shake this because it's better off for everybody in the end. Do I agree with it? No. Like it's the rule. Like Kyle Larson technically should miss the playoffs because he made the decision on his own to go stay at Indy. Now we all know he could have been back in time and to run his race, et cetera, et cetera.
If it wouldn't have been for the rain, but rain, and where I get it, and the waiver, if he would have started, even if they'd only completed 10 laps, he was in the car, right? Completed at least a lap,
right?
To me, eligible for a waiver because he was able to do that and do his job to the best of his ability where he was able. Granted, I know the weather didn't allow him to do that because they called the race. He was there putting on a helmet, Hans device, and everything else. But for NASCAR, and not necessarily Indianapolis, because obviously there's no way to do that. Where NASCAR's at speeds 190, 200 miles an hour, and Indy's running likes of 235 to 242.
Right.
Big difference running on a wet racetrack.
Right.
NASCAR's known about this for almost 2 years. Rick Hendrick's known about this. Kyle Larson's known about this. Jeff Gordon's known about this. The weather, looking out at Indy and at Charlotte almost a week and a half in advance, they knew there was going to be weather in the area. Right. They knew. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, that's unforeseen. Yes and no, because they saw the weather predicted that there was going to be weather in the area both days for both areas. So to me,
did McLaren have a backup driver to jump in for Kyle Larson? So that's where the actual mess up happened. I think they should have made a business decision, put Kyle Larson on his plane and sent him out to Charlotte. As soon as they had that 4-hour delay, he should have been on a plane headed to Charlotte. That's my opinion. I know half people are going to disagree and half are going to agree. I think once he got news that he was not going to be on time for his Charlotte race, he should have jumped on that plane and been with his team in Charlotte. That being said, we've talked about variable change before, Kevin, and even if the radar says it's a 50% chance of rain on Sunday at noon, what if that storm dissipates and they have clear skies and Kyle misses his Indy 500 and the team and everything they built? There's so many different little things that come along that affect these decisions. Given the information that Hendrick, McLaren, and Kyle Larson had, they should have put his butt on the plane, sent him to Charlotte, and ran his full-time career choice of NASCAR Cup racing.
And to me, and to me, what Larson was doing was it was awesome.
Right.
Cool. I'm not an Indy fan, getting into the sport here within the last year, because my first race was that I actually physically sat down and watched was Gateway IndyCar right about this time of year last year.
Right.
So the fact that Kyle Larson is running and all this stuff, there's more news coverage and more media coverage and all this stuff. So don't get me wrong, it's cool, it's awesome they did this. Kyle Larson is one of these guys that can jump into anything, man, and go and just drive the wheels off of it.
Right.
But you have, in the same sense, you have a prior commitment. You have a day job. You are paid millions of dollars to run this car. Right. Granted, like you said, that rain could have dissipated, but NASCAR counts on that. Look at the All-Star race. They had, just in case. Now, I know they weren't expecting the monsoon and the floating tires in the infield.
Right.
But NASCAR already had wet weather tires set aside for that reason, because they knew there was going to be weather in the area. Now, if those storms would have dissipated and they wouldn't have needed them, awesome. But NASCAR anticipated that. Granted, we can't do that at Charlotte. But NASCAR did. So why did Mr. H, Rick Hendrick, and Kyle Larson? To me, there's a prior obligation. And they already signed a 2-year deal with Indy. So if he even didn't get to do it this year, he definitely had a deal to be able to do it next year.
Right. I think he had the option for the second year, right? He had the option for the second one.
Yeah. So
okay.
To me, that's where we get it. Now, if obviously there's, like you said, there is a lot of gray area here. There's a lot of variables that go into it. But to me, if you sign a contract, you're making money, you're telling this guy, I'm going to go race your car, I'm going to go win races, compete for a championship. You can't do that if you're obligating somebody else's sport or somebody else's race car.
Right.
And to me, the thing with Chase Elliott, snowboarding accident, obviously out of his control. Granted, Larson, it was sort of out of his control, but he had the decision to say, hey, no, we're hopping up on the plane. I'm going to go win the 600.
Right. They could have handled it a little bit better. And of course, we're speaking in hindsight. We've had 4 days to sit and stew on this, right? Since Sunday afternoon, when we were all sitting there like, oh my God, Larson's not headed towards Charlotte. He's going to stick it out. Right. So we're already all on social media like, oh, this is going to stir up this is going to ruffle some feathers, for lack of better terms. Right. There would have been, I feel like, in these situations, if he immediately jumped ship, everybody would have jumped on Hendrick and been like, why did you even bother doing all this if you were just going to put him on a plane as soon as they got word of, it's just a no-win. It seems like
it almost seems like the same situation during COVID. Chase Elliott's out leading the Coca-Cola 600. You pit, damned if you don't, damned if you do.
Right.
And it's this same situation, but you have fans, you did your obligation, you're there, you did the 2 weeks of practice and qualifying, you showed that you can do this. But what a lot of these fans need to understand, he's not signed to IndyCar.
Right.
Yes, he signed a 2-year deal to be able to do this part-time, 1 race a year, okay?
Right.
But he's got another car he has to drive 38 weeks out of the year. And if he's not there to compete for that sport, to me, that just kind of completely not told the fans, fuck NASCAR or screw NASCAR. But Larson, to me, he was more interested in running Indy than he was running the Coca-Cola 600.
Yeah, I can't speak for what exactly it was that Kyle Larson wanted to do. Obviously, I don't know who made what decision along the way on Sunday afternoon when they were dealing with all this. Clearly, that's not an easy choice for any team owner,
And I'm
driver.
sure that Jeff and Rick and Larson didn't take this decision lightly at all. It wasn't
Right,
oh well, we'll just skip Charlotte.
right.
Let's race Indy. Like I'm sure that there was a couple of days where they were probably sitting in team meetings and whatnot and thinking about this thoroughly. But I don't think that. I think it was more or less maybe trying to make history portion of it that got in the way rather than a commitment decision.
Do you think Rick Hendrick and Chad Canals and Jeff Gordon, all these top dogs of Hendrick Motorsports, were looking at the situation like, well, we know we're not going to lose any of our fans in Hendrick Motorsports making this decision. We're already going to have all of our haters from all the other team fans. So that's not going to change regardless of what we decide. So if we're not going to lose any fans and we're not going to really gain haters on it, because I'm not against what they did. It's just I don't know if it was the most correct decision they could have made.
See, and I'm with you on that one. Like I tuned in. I was waiting for the Indy 500 to start. Like I was excited to see what Kyle Larson was going to do.
Right, absolutely.
But like I said, like you said, it's a business. Mm-hmm. You have to make a business decision. And to me, if I've got a prior commitment to that 5 car, all my focus, if I'm not going to be able to run the Indy 500 and still make my race, my commitment and all my focus is on the 5 team and that 5 car.
Right. Correct.
But
clearly they had a different agenda in mind. They already had something put in place where basically their eggs were in the basket and they were like, we're doing this. So, we'll deal with whatever we got to deal with on the back end of it, whether it's angry media or angry fans or what, all the noise, right? Because that's what we are. We're just the noise in the background. They're the ones out there racing. They're the ones cutting the checks, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think they're just used to it. They're used to making decisions and either half of people being upset about it or half of people being fine with it, So they made the decision. Perhaps it wasn't the best decision. And then there's no way to predict what was going to happen in Charlotte. And we'll get to Charlotte here. We haven't even discussed NASCAR and calling that race, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think they made a decision, they stuck with it, and they live with the results, Let's talk about Kyle Larson's results real quick because
let's.
This guy
I
doesn't
have to get off my chest real quick, just because I know I had said a couple things and posted on social media about Justin Allgaier may not being the right pick for that 5 car just because of his track record in the Cup Series. And I stand corrected. He proved me hella wrong this Sunday. And I have to put it out there, congratulations to Justin Allgaier and damn good job. Granted, he had a hell of a car. But having a good car is only part of it. The driver behind the wheel has got to be able to do the rest of the work.
Right.
And Justin went out there, and before Kyle hopped in, drove it from the back of the field, getting on the lead lap, going a lap down, lead lap, all the way up to 13th, man. And he was just on the radio excited. Yeah. And I just got to put that out there. Justin, you proved me wrong, buddy. If you're listening, or any of these junior motorsports guys out there, awesome job. Awesome running that 5 car. Would definitely, after that run, love to see Justin Allgaier finally get him a full-time Cup ride and some good equipment.
That'll be really interesting to see which team he does get an opportunity with, because that was basically his job interview, right? That was his
hot seat.
The hot seat. Let's see how Justin handles this next gen car, and if he does well, all right, let's sign him for a few more races, and then next year let's see about getting him into Spire Motorsports or Legacy Legacy's Toyota now. One of these other smaller Chevy teams, and start building his way up. Now, as far as Justin's age, I think he's 38 now, 37. So he's my age. That's not exactly young, but it's not crazy old either. So he's still got a good 5 or 6 good years of solid racing. So
I feel like if he stays down in the Xfinity Series, he might have a little longer than that. Just because with this new car, not just this new car, last car too, but definitely with this new car, the demand, the physical demand for this car, we saw Dale Sr., his last race, man, 53 years old, wheeling a cup car, looking to finish third in the Daytona 500.
Right.
And now we got drivers that are retiring at 44, 45, 46.
And I'm going to elaborate on that 2001 Daytona 500 real quick, where Dale Sr. would have finished third. If Dale Sr. didn't have his 2 cars ahead of him, Dale probably
Daytona 500 win number 2.
Dale probably gets up there and moves them out of the, not wreck them, but probably he's good enough to get around whoever he wants to. He probably would have rattled off a second win there. But
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, but the physical demand you had, I'm not saying those cars back then weren't physically demanding, because they were heavy.
Right.
Heavy.
Solid steel.
In a traditional stock car, if you will.
Right.
And now, granted, they're still heavy, 3,800 pounds, but they're not 5,400 pounds.
Right.
They don't have that heavy curb weight, but they are still physically demanding. So, I mean, but maybe that says a lot about the sport and the car and the drivers also, the breed of drivers that are coming up. Because like I said, with this new car, and especially the type of hits that it's taking, even though NASCAR is taking the precautions to make it safer, 53 is not an age that somebody needs to be behind the wheel of these cars.
Right. And you got to keep in mind that the contracts are a lot different these days. So drivers that are trying to, support their families, and we're not just talking about immediate family. We're talking about a lot of these guys help out their surrounding family too, as far as cousins, uncles, brothers. And so these guys are getting a lot bigger paychecks cut each week. And so they're able to retire a little bit early, whereas some of these guys felt like they had to continue racing just to kind of keep that revenue coming in.
And see, for me, on the retirement part, I feel like Dale could have retired 6 or 7 years before that.
Yeah, Dale probably could have. Yeah.
But I feel like the whole reason he didn't was because of the love for the sport, the love for what he did.
And and his son, he loved competing with his son.
And I don't think that Dale would have wanted to go out any other way.
No, absolutely not. If he had to choose a way to go, it would be in a race car.
Yeah, for sure. Dale went out it was gruesome, but Dale went out the way that I'm sure that he would want to go out.
Right.
I don't think it was on his own terms, but in another aspect, technically it was. Right. These guys know what they sign up for every time they strap that belt on. Dale went doing what he loved, and Adam Petty, same way.
Yep.
So, and you've got guys out here that I know that are passionate enough that if that's the way I go, hey, I went happy.
Right.
I think
Paul Walker said before he passed away, he said, if I ever die racing a car, just know I died smiling.
And to me, that's one of the biggest, died doing what you love, man.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing. And these guys don't go out there it is a paycheck, but these guys go out there, and the whole reason we see the fights, Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick and Chris Buescher and all those stuff, it's not because you just flat out wrecked me. What gets the tempers and stuff is the passion, just the drive that these guys have to do what they love. And then when things like that happen, they get heated, man.
Right.
So
they're taking trophies out of their trophy case.
Exactly. Okay, so we'll hop on to our next subject.
Talk to me.
Man, we got a Coke 375. Okay, didn't get a Coke 600. Got a little bit halfway. I can see why NASCAR said, okay, we're going to call this race. Charlotte does have a noise ordinance at past 1 a.m. Okay. To me, and like I said, told Jordan, with certain races, with the prestige of the Coke 600, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard 400, the Southern 500, and the championship race at the end of the season, there should be other
gray areas.
If that's, technically that's what it is.
Right.
But for those races, because we don't get a race like this but once a year.
Right.
And I feel like we got robbed.
We did.
We got lap 247 in?
I think we're right at 249, if I remember correctly.
249. So we've only got 150 laps to go, man. Like, give us a 600. From the drop of the green flag until That best Coke 600 I've watched in I don't know how long.
The amount of passing, the amount of strategy, the amount of guys that were able to manipulate their own personal race to their advantage. That was absolutely a beautiful race taking place in front of our eyes. As far as Christopher Bell walking with the trophy, Christopher Bell was one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. Now, variable change again, that things change. Sometimes your car gets away from you. Sometimes your car gets better. Who knows who could have come on late? But Christopher Bell at that time probably had the best car. So if it is the 375 or whatever,
minus the 5 car, because I'm sure with the way that 5 car was coming, if Larson got it behind the wheel of it, he'd have passed Bell, and Bell would have been like, see ya.
Yeah, there's not much you can do, right?
No.
But as far as the race as a whole, I mean, just incredible racing. I mean, all the way across the board. I was excited for Tyler and Bubba. They were both really making moves. I know Bubba got trapped outside the top 10 towards the end there. If I remember correctly, he's 11th. Tyler in his 4th place.
And I think that was due to a pit strategy that they had going on
right
before the threat of rain started to come into the area.
Right. So he probably still finishes with a top 5 if that thing goes green, barring wrecks and all that. Denny Hamlin on Actions Detrimental mentioned something really interesting. And he said, even if y'all were worried about a time or noise ordinance, tell all the drivers as soon as they're buckling in, get in their ear, NASCAR, get in their ear, say, we're doing 100 laps. And that's when we're calling the race. You get 100 laps to finish this thing. Instead of the full 151, another stage break, et cetera, et cetera. Y'all got 100 laps. Go figure this out so we can get the hell out of here. Denny even said people were saying that the track was getting dry spots on it. Like
you could see from before when they rolled that car to victory lane, you could see, but a lot of everybody humidity. And I'm like, I mean, I get that takes in a bit.
When you got low clouds sitting on top of the racetrack, it's creating that moisture and it's making it harder to dry. But from what they were telling us,
the track was drying. So I don't know I don't know who decided to leak the whole humidity information, because that really stuck a thorn in NASCAR's side. They could have done without the whole humidity comment, because other people across the sport were saying, no, the track is drying. Give us 30 minutes with the jet dryers and they'll be just fine. Another thing we need to cover is why NASCAR rented out jet dryers all the way to Indianapolis when they've got their own crown jewel to worry about. I thought that was very interesting. So with that, I know, so I've been to numerous races, 7 or 8 different racetracks. And every time we go, they always have, it doesn't matter if they're calling for it or not, they always have air titans and track dryers at the location.
Right.
Going to Bristol, if you're still going in September, you'll see when they go out to dry the track and sweep and all that stuff. There was a blower truck down from Dover for the spring. So I know every racetrack has got their own team. And NASCAR, they load all those Titans and stuff up on a big rig after the race, and they haul them from race to race. Right. Now I know, like I said, some tracks have their own, and some tracks have maybe a blower and an air Titan. But obviously, when it's even Bristol Motor Speedway, you need 5 or 6 air Titans out there to get a track dry. Right. So to me, I'm in agreement with you, but I feel like they had enough air Titans out there that even if they would have stuck another 3 or 4 out there, I don't think it would have made a difference. It might have dried the track a little quicker, maybe by 20 for 30 minutes. And that seems a lot, but by the time they get that ready and all that stuff, and the drivers get going, you're still stuck in the same situation as far as time, noise ordinance, and all that stuff.
Right. I was just going off of something that I had read that they had rented out a bunch of jet dryers. So if you're saying it wouldn't have really mattered, then it wouldn't have really mattered.
Now, I feel like the torrential downpour that they got in Indy, I feel like that's why NASCAR said, yes, we're going to let you rent these. We're going to send these to you, because I feel like after the rainstorm, and I'm sure you saw some of the media coverage of just how hard it was pouring.
Oh, yeah.
Indianapolis is not banked that much. So all that standing water has got to go somewhere. It's got to be sprayed off. And I feel like that's why they had all those air Titans sent up there, was to help them out But I also feel like NASCAR did that to cover their own butt, so to make sure that the Indy 500 didn't run over into the Coca-Cola 600.
Right.
And I felt like NASCAR was trying to help with that.
Okay.
Now, could they have put another air tighten or two out there? Yes, but I don't feel like it had made a difference.
Right.
Now, if they had went out there with one of those trucks that have the jet engine on the back with the blower angled, one or two of those up against the wall to help with the weepers and the bleeders, that might have helped tremendously. But as far as the air tightens and all that stuff go, the air tightens only do so much. The blowers and everything else pretty much finish. They're the icing on the cake.
Right.
So as far as that goes, yeah, I will commend NASCAR renting out their air dryers to go help another sport to be able to put that out there.
A sister sport, if you will.
And I don't feel if they wouldn't have had those air tightens and would have had to use what Indy had, I don't think we would have had an Indy 500 on Sunday.
Yeah, that's true.
So without NASCAR, there's no Indy 500 on Sunday. But
right.
Without NASCAR, we would have had an Indy 500 on Monday, and we might have still had a Coca-Cola 600, and we wouldn't be talking about this waiver for Kyle Larson either.
Right.
So, back to the damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Have they announced if he's gotten his waiver yet? Has that been? Or...
No, NASCAR has said that they are taking time, ample time to look at this because they don't want to make the wrong decision.
Right. And so how does that work as far as Kyle? I mean, does he go out and win 5 more races and he's still not eligible for the playoffs?
So the way that it works, so it's still the same as it was in 2015, like when Kyle Busch wrecked at Daytona.
Right. Missed 11 races or whatever it was.
Okay. So they said, okay, so you still have to have at least one race win and you have to be top 16 in points.
Okay.
Of course, Kyle went out and won 2 races before the chase and ended up with enough points to go in.
Right.
But that was a medical waiver that he missed because of an accident in the race car.
He was excused correctly, whereas we're discussing Kyle being excused incorrectly.
And I wouldn't even call it incorrectly, but it's just excused, unexcused is pretty much, it's like an absentee at school. You're either excused or not excused. That's the way that I look at it. But because of the circumstances and the decisions that could have been made on that particular, I feel like that's why it's taking NASCAR a long time. Now, Rick Hendrick said in an interview, they asked him about it, and he gave a long, awkward pause with a not so happy look on his face.
Okay.
So I don't know if NASCAR's giving him information that they just don't want to hear, and it's almost like they're leading to a decision that they really don't want to hear, or Rick Hendrick is just acting like that to give us fans speculation. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Would it be safe to assume that a lot of this is just satire for social media and for the internet clicks and stuff like that? Because let's call a spade a spade. Kyle Larson is one of the best NASCAR drivers that the sport has seen.
And I'm a Kyle Busch fan. This come from a Kyle Busch fan. I'm sorry, even with the stuff that Kyle Busch has accomplished, Kyle Larson is a better wheelman than Kyle Busch.
I would have to agree with that.
And the fact that we have now seen that, and we didn't think we would see that in the last 20 years that Kyle's been in Cup or even in NASCAR for that matter. Now, Larson doesn't have, he's 10 years in, and we're on year 3 with Hendrick, correct? Year 4 with Hendrick?
I think this is 4, 2021, 22, maybe 5, 20, because he raced with Chase and he was suspended indefinitely.
And fired in 2020. That's where we got to pick up too and mention, because everybody's like, well, they gave Matt Kenseth a waiver in 2020 for the pandemic. Well, you have to think Kyle Larson got fired. There's nobody to drive that car, and then you get a full-time driver. So yes, that waiver to me, that waiver was necessary. That allowed Kenseth to be eligible for the playoffs to make sure that car was still eligible. To me, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, you give Kenseth a waiver.
Right.
Considering unforeseen circumstances of, like I said, Larson getting fired, and the pandemic, all that stuff. But a lot of this stuff going on with Larson is there's not a lot of gray area. It's all black and white, and that's why I feel like NASCAR is taking their time. is because there's not a lot of gray. There's a lot of black and white, and there's not a lot of places to be able to give a lot of slack.
Right. So let's go off of NASCAR saying, no, you are not eligible for the playoffs following, or you're not eligible for your waiver. We are denying that right now. Moving into Gateway, you are not eligible for the playoffs. Do we really think Kyle Larson's still not going to make the playoffs without a waiver?
Yes.
You think he's not going to make the playoffs?
Without a waiver, he is ineligible for the playoffs. So it's in the rule book, and this is not me, this is NASCAR. So with Kyle Busch, because they said, okay, here's a waiver, but you still have to do this.
Right. Because we're not too far off of what Kyle Busch did and how many races he missed to where Kyle Larson is in the season.
Now, it's not they may give Larson, and to me, I'm in agreement with you. If Larson misses the playoffs, it is bad for NASCAR.
It is bad.
Okay, so, but if they give him a waiver, even though he's already got a win, he missed that. He got all the wins and all the points he's already got out the window.
Okay.
If they give him, okay, you have from now until the end of the Southern 500, which is the last
regular season race.
Yeah, regular season race. You have till now, till the end of the Southern 500 to win a race. And I think now you have to be top 30 in points.
Okay.
And not necessarily as strict as points. I don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure on that last part.
Okay.
But if they say, okay, no waiver means he's ineligible. But in that point, watch out, because from week in and week out, that's not only going to piss Kyle Larson off, that's going to piss off the team. That's going to piss off Rick Hendrick, Jeff Gordon, Cliff Daniels. If NASCAR says no from that point on, Larson's driving like a pissed off teenager.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
And he doesn't care who he wrecks and who he pisses off and whose feelings he hurts. He is going out there to make a statement to say, I should have been in this playoffs. I should have won the 2024 Cup Series championship, and to go back, and it would not surprise me one bit if he missed the playoffs, drove like that, and won the 2025 Daytona 500.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if he won Phoenix, to be honest, at the end of the year either, just to give him the middle finger into the offseason, you know? And as laid back and as chill as Kyle Larson is, it would be a metaphorical middle finger heading into the offseason.
It really would. And there's not a lot. These guys are talented. Every guy that's behind the wheel of a Cup car right now has got some sort of talent, more than others, and some of it's just natural ability.
Right.
Kyle Larson's one of those guys. Kyle Busch is Christopher Bell. I wouldn't go as far to say Chase Elliott or Alex Bowman or those guys. Now, if we're going to talk about Hendrick now, I definitely have to give a shout out to Willie B. William Byron, that 24 car, man. Fast car in Charlotte this year. Slightly been a toe leak because he didn't realize that he was not clear of the Ford Josh Berry coming out of 2. The pass in the turf, bro. All 4 tires in the turf. I thought that car was going around.
I thought he was about to wreck 3 people. Like, I was so scared for not only my pick, Gibbs, my driver, Reddick, being in the middle of that. And then, I don't want to see William Byron.
And then you got, and with that, the moment that just happened, they just came out of 4. Gibbs smacks the wall.
Right.
Makes contact in the right rear with Reddick. They save it. Byron's got a hellacious run off of 4. He's like, screw it. If we ain't splitting them, I'm going around. All 4 tires in the turf. And just gone.
That was crazy. It's one of those moves where if he wrecks everyone, what are you doing, bonehead? But since he pulled it off, it was like, holy shit, did you see what William Byron did? So that was a crazy move. My jaw hit the ground. My eyes opened up wide because I thought my guy was about to be wrecked out of this race. Just going off of a 3,500-pound race car, all 4 tires. He didn't even have 2 tires.
And the sun's going down, man. So all that moisture and stuff, the heat, all that moisture, that turf is just a little bit wet.
Yep.
And the fact that he was at just straight, that you couldn't tell that car had a wiggle to it or anything.
Yep.
Up and around and gone.
It was an awesome move. I got hats off to him. That was a great move because it worked. I'm giving him
The benefit
the
of the doubt.
I'm gonna give him the benefit because had he wrecked a couple guys, including two really popular guys, that he would have been answering a lot of questions on Monday morning. So
And I'm sure they would have pissed off Toyota because there goes 2 of their 6 cars.
right, and two of the fastest,
So,
other than Denny.
well, and as the sun fell, as the lights come on, the track changes and the sun goes down. Gibbs doesn't have that fast of a car. He's dropping.
Right.
And we always expect with the Coke 600, whoever's up front at the start is not necessarily who's going to be running up front when the sun goes down.
Right.
And we saw that. I will say Kyle Busch. We had a shit weekend. But as soon as the sun started going down, there was speed in that number 8 Chevrolet.
Right.
If we'd have gone, now I'm not going to say we would have won as far as winning the Coke 600. I feel like we had a top 5 or a top 7 car. If it wouldn't have been for the rain. Now we'll jump right into the weather. NASCAR could have said, okay, well, this track's not going to dry, but because of the race that it is, we're going to go green at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, or hell, 12:30. Make it. I hate that it wouldn't have been a night race because of the 600. But if you go, it's hot, it's slick the next day. It would have made for an even more interesting race.
Right.
And we could have got, if NASCAR would have said, okay, well, let's get this 151 out. Let's go home. Let's give the fans the Coke 600.
And it only would have been maybe a third of the fans probably would have come back Monday because a lot of people have flights, a lot of people have stuff that they've got to take care of. But they still
that's why if I'm traveling to a track, like even though I'm 3.5 hours from Charlotte Motor Speedway, last year when we went, it piss poured all weekend. We went to the track. It was piss pouring on Sunday, and it took NASCAR almost 3 hours to finally say, okay, we're not racing today. Came back the next day. It was pouring again. So they were like, you know what? We're going to run the Xfinity race, then the fog and the condensation. They're like, okay, well, we got to get the Coke 600 underway. We'll finish the Xfinity race afterwards.
Right.
It was just a mess. But to me, if I'm going to a race and if I think it may be postponed because of the weather, I'm not leaving out till Tuesday morning.
Right.
And that's how I always schedule mine. Whether like the Daytona 500 that I went to in 2022. My buddy's like, I'm leaving Monday morning. I'm like, okay, well, I'm here till Tuesday because if it gets rained out on Sunday, it's the Daytona 500. I ain't going home.
Right.
I don't care if Kyle wrecks out. It's the 500. I'm not going home.
Right.
So, and I know a lot of people don't have that option because they have obligations with a job and children and things of that nature. So, but that's just, and a lot of people may not have thought about doing that. They may, okay, well, screw it. If I get to see the race, I get to see the race. If not, because if I don't stay till Tuesday and it gets rained out, I'm not only out the race, I'm out for whatever I paid for.
Right.
So no, I'm getting my full money's worth. And I'm one of those race fans. I sat out there in a poncho, blankets and everything else in the piss pouring rain to wait. I told you the story, me sitting out at Bristol Motor Speedway in 24-degree weather to watch Kyle Busch win the Food City 500. So there's not a lot of people out there with that dedication, but there's a lot of people out there that would like to have that dedication that just don't have the commitment standpoint to have that.
Right.
I mean, we had an exciting weekend of racing planned. And then for me, I'm not going to say it was mediocre, but it was mediocre.
It wasn't what it could have been because of all the circumstances that played into what happened. A lot of it out of people's control, and a lot of it that was in someone's control, and they decided to make decisions that probably didn't line up with a lot of fans' opinions anyway. And so I think NASCAR kind of shot themselves in the foot. Will people get over it? Probably. Will people move on to Gateway and forget about it? Probably. But the fact that people are left with that stain in their memories, that's not a good stain to have, right? And especially when it's avoidable. Whether you get the race back, This whole noise ordinance thing in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're talking about Charlotte, North Carolina. We're talking about the racing capital of NASCAR.
We'll see, and it's funny because Charlotte Motor Speedway is not even in Charlotte.
Right.
It's in Concord, and like I said, this last year is my third Coke 600. There's neighborhoods on the backside about 4 or 5 miles out. And granted, these Cup cars, especially these new next-gen cars, are a lot louder. But even 2 or 3 miles down the road at Hendrick Cars, the dealership and stuff they got when you're going into the offset of Concord, entering Charlotte, you can still hear them, but it's a buzz. It's almost
you're not
like
going to be able to, if you're in your house, it's not going to affect anything, man. Like it's not going to be this overpowering sound.
And it's built into a bowl because you have the corners that are like this.
Right.
And then you have the hills and the grandstands on either side. So that noise is just reverberating up, not out.
Yes. Most of the sound's going up anyway. It's not necessarily going straight out. And then on top of the fact of 5 miles is a long way for it to reach a house and actually affect people. So I think it was a cop-out, man. I don't know why they decided to do it that way. I don't know why they wouldn't want Kyle Larson to jump in the damn race car and put a show on for the sold-out Charlotte crowd.
I feel like that NASCAR probably made that call because one of the other biggest issues that NASCAR has had is attendance issues.
Okay.
Granted, no matter what year it is, if it's 1988 or if it's 2028, a Monday race is not going to be a sold-out race.
No.
It doesn't matter who the hell you can bring Dale Earnhardt back from the dead and put him in that 3 car, and a Monday race is still not going to be sold out.
Right.
So, and it reverts right back to the people that are NASCAR. They make decisions because I feel like they don't want the negative backlash from those fans, but they still get the negative backlash from the fans who want it. So, like another damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're right down the middle. You can't make one side happy and you piss the other side off.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what you do.
I'm kind of glad I realized that aspect of society, because once I realized everything is borderline 50-50 with people's opinions, it made it a lot easier to accept a lot of the things out of your control, whether it be missing out on 151 laps at Charlotte Motor Speedway, or the list goes on and on. With when things are taken out of my control, it's helped me accept things a lot easier.
Let it happen.
It's going to happen. We're all going to move on to Monday. We're going to talk about it on Tuesday on the podcast.
We're going racing the next Sunday again anyways.
We're going racing next weekend anyway. It's just one of those things where, yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't, but we'll get over it, right?
So, let's talk about Christopher Bell. One of the fastest Toyotas out there, and granted, he's got the backing of Joe Gibbs Racing. Adam Stevens, one of the best crew chiefs out there, and we saw that with Kyle Busch. 40-odd something wins and 2 Cup championships in 4 years.
And the last 2 championships, I think Kyle Busch was the sole owner of those since, 2009 or something? So he has the only 2 Gibbs championships in the last almost 2 decades. With Tony Stewart in 2005, I think, was the last one.
Well, if you get technical with Furniture Row Racing in 2017 with Martin Truex Jr.
Okay.
Technically, because that was a flagship team, but it was Gibbs, but it wasn't Gibbs.
I got you. But as far as going off the Gibbs banner on the nose of the car, if you will, I think it's safe to say that Kyle Busch
has the only 2 championships. Yeah. Right. Now I don't feel like that's going to be like that for long. Look at this 20 car. Look at this Christopher Bell kid. He's had the last 2 years appearance in the championship 4.
Correct.
I don't think that changes this year. I feel
Probably
like that
not.
20 car, I say half 2 of the championship 4, we'll probably see the 11 of Denny Hamlin and the 20 of Christopher Bell. And Hamlin will either choke again or wreck out like he always does. He's always strong through the playoffs and everywhere else, but it always seems once they get to Phoenix or Homestead or wherever the hell they're supposed to be, problems arise for that 11 team.
Whatever can go wrong will
go wrong, and it sucks because it's just Denny that has those issues.
Right.
Now I know Christopher Bell had that issue last year. Brew Blake blew a brake caliper and hit the wall early in the race, to anybody, especially a championship 4 contender, that sucks.
That's a mechanical failure out of your control, and that's even tougher to swallow than if you were to get in a wreck with someone.
Exactly. Because the only person you could be pissed off at is not even really yourself. It's just the situation.
It's the car failing you. There's nothing. It's nobody's real fault. It's just a product of the sport.
And to me, it is what it is, and it sucks. But you go into the off season, you say, okay, we were strong here. What can we do next year? The next time we're here to be able to be better. And I feel like Christopher Bell has done that. Ever since hopping in this 20 car, it took him and Adam Stevens a minute, I think, to get the chemistry together, to feel out how Christopher likes his cars, how he relays information. Because you got to think, Adam Stevens was used to a high-strung Kyle Busch.
Right.
Excuse
to
me.
A very laid-back Christopher Bell.
Yes. F this car, it's garbage, plowing, just all the time on the radio, to somebody being, okay, needed more rear security, no front grip, plowing. And Adam Stevens was not used to that because you had a vocal Kyle Busch on the radio. So it took them 2 or 3 years to get used to that. But now that we see that it finally clicked, that there is success with that team. And that's scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a young talent like Christopher Bell already rattling off and running the way that he is, making 2 championship 4 appearances already, and he is early in his career. Now, championships are harder to win now.
Right.
But I don't see why that kid don't rattle off 4 or 5.
He might get a couple for sure. He might.
And as far as Charlotte goes, what coulda, woulda, shoulda, with the weather, the way that everything played out. Christopher Bell, man, he was hightailing it and checking out there when the red flag came out.
Yep.
I don't think, besides if the race goes, and there's always that big if Larson gets behind the wheel, because we heard what Allgaier had to say about that car. I'm not saying that Larson is a better driver than Allgaier, but Larson's a better driver than Allgaier. And if Allgaier is running through the field, picking people off one by one and up into the top 15, Larson's only got 12 other cars to pass.
Yep. So,
but congratulations to Christopher Bell. Congratulations to Adam Stevens and those guys and Joe Gibbs Racing, and Toyota especially. Man, it's insane to see that what kind of team that Joe Gibbs Racing had before Kyle left, with the slump that they had, to see that same team that Kyle had when he left succeeding. And I know it's got to be a kick in the teeth to Kyle too. Because I know in talking about Gateway, we're going to a racetrack this weekend. We'll make 36 races since Kyle's won his last race.
Do you think it's more of a kick in the teeth the second year because he was so successful last season, where last season they were probably like, well, this is Kyle Busch, like he goes and wins races every year. Now that he's having all these struggles this season, now is it more of like a kind of grass is greener on the other side type thing? Like I kind of miss my old ride, or is he a professional and he's like, this is what my job is. Like I'm in this equipment now. The past is the past. That don't matter.
Kyle is professional when it comes to that. He'll be like, this is what I did at Joe Gibbs Racing, but I'm not there anymore. I'm not with them. I'm not with Toyota. I've signed a contract with Richard Childress. I'm driving this number 8 Chevrolet, and whoever's on the side of it, on the car for the weekend, whether it's Zone, Cheddar's, 3Chi, whoever, he's focused on here and now. Kyle is not a focus on the past, because if that were the case, we'd still be hearing about that win in Fontana in 2005.
Right.
Okay, so 63 wins later, we've already talked. Kyle is on the backside of his career.
Correct.
He's even said he's only got 6, 7, 8 seasons left in him.
I don't see it going that long. I just don't.
I
think mentally he's getting checked out is what's happening naturally. And now that Brexton is coming up, now that they've got their.
I feel like that's where his focus is at. I don't feel like he's lost his touch or he's on the backside. I feel like most of his focus where it normally, because now you have Lennox in the picture. He's not just a dad to Brexton anymore. He's got a little baby girl.
Right.
And he wants that family time and all that stuff. Kyle Busch outside the racetrack, and a lot of people won't do this because they don't want to go see Kyle. They don't want to meet Kyle. They hate Kyle.
Right.
And to me, you don't, unless you have seen Kyle Busch outside the racetrack, outside of the work zone, you don't know what kind of human being, what kind of man Kyle Busch is. And I know there's a lot of other fans that have seen Kyle outside of his comfort box, out in public. But Kyle is also one of these. I've seen multiple videos. Las Vegas last year, some lady was wearing his 2015 championship jacket inside a restaurant. They were waiting on their order, and Kyle walked right up to her and gave her a hug, signed her jacket, took a picture. Kyle's just one of those guys for his fans. But with Brexton's racing, Brexton hits NASCAR. Watch out, bro. Watch out. It would not surprise me if Lennox started racing. Lennox is a lot like Brexton. I follow the Instagram and the stories that they post on Facebook and all that stuff. Kyle's focus right now is on Brexton and his family, and I don't feel like, as a fan, you feel like that's your job. That's where screw your family. But no, NASCAR is not that sport. Now, if Kyle's on the backside of his career, and he probably knows it, and that's probably why his focus is on Brexton and not completely 100% on what he's doing.
That's kind of where my mind is I think he knows, and he just hasn't kind of voiced it to anybody in the media yet, because once the media gets wind of Kyle Busch being towards the end of his career, that's all they're going to talk about until he retires, so he's doing a really good job of keeping that under wraps. I don't think he goes 6-7 more years. I give him 2 max, especially if this Richard.
Well, I give him at least 4, considering he just signed a 3-year extension.
Oh, with RCR.
I don't know if it's RCR. He signed a 3-year extension with Cheddar's and some other sponsors. I'm not sure if that ties into RCR or if he has to, as it sits right now, out in limbo. Other people I've talked to, he is not currently to return to RCR next year. At least there hasn't been a contract that's been signed that anybody knows about.
Okay.
And that's where we come in. We'll mention Stewart-Haas Racing closing their doors at the end of the 2024 season. So we have 4 Cup drivers and 2 Xfinity drivers that will no longer have a ride next year. Now, I know today, rumor is that Josh Berry and Rodney Childers are going to be the number 4. Josh Berry and Rodney Childers will be at Front Row Motorsports next year.
Okay.
Now, that hasn't been officially announced, but that's what's out there right now.
Okay. As far as, and this is not, I don't want to take any fans, I'm going to get heat for it, but as far as Chase Briscoe and Ryan Preece goes, because I don't see Josh Berry really having an issue finding a ride, and I don't see Noah Gragson. Really.
Chase Briscoe is actually rumored that Harrison Burton will not return to Wood Brothers next year, that Chase Briscoe will take the ride in the 21.
Interesting. Okay, congratulations.
That is a rumor. And to me, I feel like if we should go a bit further, this is going to piss Jordan off. Cindric needs to be booted from that 2 car.
I can't disagree with that. I don't understand. It's so frustrating on so many levels because of a family tie and having a seat in top tier equipment and wasting it for
because your daddy he's the director of athletics
that has got to be the most ignorant move I have seen. It'd be one thing if Cindric showed out and had a couple wins each season.
Well, see, to me, I feel like in the beginning he deserved that Cup ride because look what he did for Penske in the Xfinity Series. Dominant, right? And then his first Cup race rattles off a Daytona 500 win. We're like, okay, watch out. Look at this kid. And he ain't done crap since.
What has he accomplished since Daytona
Jack
2022? So I am absolutely blown away that this kid still has a ride. I have met Austin Cindric face to face, shook his hand. Genuinely one of the kindest guys out there on the grid.
Awesome dude.
But that does not substitute for wins in NASCAR.
And that's the reason we feel the same way about Matty D. man, awesome driver. If you put him in some good equipment, he can show that he can do it. He can
Right.
run up with the best of them. But you look at all his finishes and you're like, holy crap. And then you look at the win column and you're like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, he's got a handful of top fives, a butt ton of top tens when he had good equipment. I still think he was robbed of that Talladega race when Denny Hamlin cut down the apron. Granted, Hamlin was trying to avoid the wreck, even though everybody else stayed on track. I think Matty D was robbed of his first Cup win at Talladega back in 2021.
Yep.
That's my opinion. But who knows what that launches his career into if he rattles off that win. We've seen guys get their first win and I mean, gone to just start rattling them off. So who knows what could have been with Matty D in that 21 car. I think NASCAR played favoritism to Denny's favor in that instance to not disqualify him and give him the win over Matty D. That's a business decision, and it is what it is. Austin Cindric probably shouldn't be in the 2 car anymore. I mean, he's wasting. Man, Noah Gragson.
I was just sitting here thinking Noah Gragson in a top tier Penske car.
Dude, he might go over Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, man. Like,
because we've already heard, so Junior and Kelly have already stated they are not going Cup racing. They cannot afford the charters. We already know RCR has already stated they are not running a third-time full charter.
Okay.
Or a third full-time charter.
Wouldn't make any sense for them to.
No, especially with the way their program is right now, it would not make any sense to put money to put another car out when you can't even finish in the top 5 or win races this season.
Right. And how much longer does Austin Dillon have? We don't bring up that dude's name, and I think it's because most people are scared to talk about Austin Dillon. But when are we going to start throwing his name in there with the Harrison Burtons and?
Well, and I do all the time. Austin, he's a wheel man, not for the Cup Series though. He can wheel the shit out of a truck and the crap out of Xfinity car.
Right.
The only reason he has a Cup ride, and I'm saying, Austin, I've met Austin several times. Chill dude to have a conversation with, one of the just down to earth guy.
Right.
But when it comes to business, man, it's what's best for business. The only reason Dillon has a ride is because Grandpappy owns a team.
Correct.
Now, I can say the same for Ty Gibbs.
But
there is a but. Gibbs has performed out on the racetrack. We have yet to have a win, but this is only his, second full season?
Right. He's halfway through his second season.
Okay, so
he's in the playoffs right now.
There is that big but, and there's always going to be that but until Ty Gibbs wins his first Cup race. But like I said, that's night and day.
So that just comes with the family aspect that is NASCAR. Once it's a family oriented sport, and so a lot of these guys got their opportunity because of family.
And RFK has announced they are sticking to a 2-car team. They are not buying any charters. 2311, and I'm just rumor right now, and I think it's a far-fetched rumor. I would love for it to be true, even though I love RCR, what he's done, what Richard's done for Kyle, what they've brought to the table for Kyle. 2311 picks up another charter. You're stupid not to sign Kyle Busch. Stupid. Idiotic, for that matter. Okay, so you have Denny Hamlin over there mentoring these guys from a driver and an owner standpoint, but you can only put so much driver intuition into your own drivers because you have to be able to keep your own secrets to be able to drive your race car.
Right.
Toyota tried to keep Kyle. We know that they can bring sponsors. We know, and if he can't bring his sponsors from RCR, we know that Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan are not going to have problems getting sponsors for Kyle Busch.
Correct.
I would love to see Kyle. As much as I love seeing him in that 8 car, I hate being a fan watching my driver struggle, especially being a Kyle Busch fan when I'm used to winning every other race and rattling off crown jewel wins and Cup Series championships and all that. And I'm just, as a Kyle Busch fan, the way that our season has gone so far, I am not used to this. Right. And I'm not going to say it's depressing, but it's a Debbie Downer.
It's definitely a level of adversity that Kyle Busch and Kyle Busch diehard fans are going through right now, especially when you are in what's supposed to be decent equipment in RCR, who's had the Dale Earnhardts, has the championships, has the resumes, has all of it to go with it. And it just doesn't seem to be clicking for whatever reason, whether it's a mental thing for Kyle Busch and the situation he's in, whether it's an equipment issue, a team issue, it's not clicking. So something's got to change. And I don't see Kyle Busch fans jumping ship on Kyle Busch, but I definitely
You
see
will
Kyle.
not see me jumping ship on Kyle. I will ride with Kyle until the day he says I'm done.
Right. But
When
I do
he
see
hangs the helmet up at Phoenix that last race, his final year, the next year I will put on another driver's gear. Up until then, I will continue to buy Kyle Busch merchandise. I will continue to ride behind Kyle 110%.
I do see fans jumping ship on RCR racing, and that is not good when your favorite driver races for the team you dislike. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's going to put them in an interesting spot as far as how do y'all want to approach this moving forward. Whether Kyle makes a jump back to Toyota or whether he stays with Chevy. I know Trackhouse has been one of the team names that have popped up about adding a third full-time Cup ride.
And that would be scary too if Kyle says, okay, well, I'm not going to Toyota because I can't take these sponsors with me unless I stay with Chevrolet. He goes over to Trackhouse. It's done. It's over. Because you got Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Kyle Busch, equipment that we know can win, equipment we know can run up front.
And a balls to the wall manager and owner in Justin Marks, man.
And in Pitbull.
Right.
So, I mean, there's money going to that team. There's no essence and no lack of money per terms going in any of those race cars.
Right.
It's a what if and I wish kind of moment until options start popping up, and even then it's I hope or I wish, and we won't really get what we want in the long run. But like I said, when they announced that the 18 car wasn't going to be an option for Kyle, for a lot of Kyle Busch fans, we were feeling the anxiety and the feelings, the depression and all that stuff that Kyle was feeling, because we're like, man, we hate it for Kyle because, he's one of the top drivers in the top Michelin of motorsports. And we didn't really see anybody like Kyle go through this at all.
Right.
Except for Jimmy Johnson. And that's what's scary, because we have starting this year, or continuing this year, we have 18 years that we have consecutively won at least one race.
Right. Is that in jeopardy this year, or do you think he'll get one?
I feel like we're staring at another pandemic year. And when I say that is because we struggled and struggled and struggled, and for some reason could not click until Texas in the fall of 2020, when we got just the one win and we were already eliminated from the playoffs.
Right.
We should have won Bristol the previous round. We finished second to Harvick. I feel like it's one of those years, but we're going to jump to this weekend, Gateway. This is where Kyle won his last race. In the last two races, he finished second and first.
Yep.
The only other people that we really even have to worry about having speed here, to me, is Tyler Reddick and Joey Logano. Denny Hamlin had some speed, but I feel like it's going to be a Toyota, and I feel like we're going to have brake issues again this year. We always do, and a lot of them it's all Toyota. And I know with Noah Gragson, we had that one Chevrolet, his 42 car that year, when he just almost head on with the wall.
Right.
And that was scary, but Gateway is one of Kyle's best tracks right now. So we definitely take the notes from that we got from the last 2 years, especially last year where we just dominated.
Right.
We had a fast car. I feel like this weekend is where our season starts to take a turn.
Right. So you can build momentum off of what you know from last season, winning Gateway, and especially with it being halfway through the season too.
For sure. But until we get out on track, until we see practice and qualifying and see what kind of speed and what kind of setup and whatnot we have in the car, we really won't know. And we don't know that week to week because, the last couple of years at Phoenix, every year the spring winner has been different from the fall winner.
Right.
And it's never the same people that we always expect to have speed at this racetrack. You know, we never expected Ryan Blaney to come in and win the championship last year. But he showed up with tremendous speed, and they sucked in the spring.
Right.
So I don't know if it's just a hit or miss with this car, or if the notes even – I'm sure the notes help, but do they help to the extent they did with the last car?
I think that no, I don't think they help as much, and I think that makes things more interesting from a fan's perspective and from a racing purist. Like, I think it's good that we don't have the same people dominating in the spring as in the fall.
We had in, what was it, 2018, when we had the big three, they called them. You had Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr., and Kyle and Kevin rattled off 9 wins that season. That's insane.
Right.
9 wins. I mean, we saw Larson do that in 21 with the championship.
Right.
But to me, I feel like this new car is just a roll of the dice. It doesn't matter who brings what to the racetrack. I feel like, the car that Kyle won with last year, if we'd have taken that same car and put Bubba Wallace behind the wheel, somebody else wins that race, not Bubba. And it's just because with this car, it's a hit or miss. It's a roll of the dice. It's a gamble.
Right.
Because there's not as many things to do to this that you can do to this car that you could the last one to make it better, whether it was to give you more rotation in the center or to give you more rear grip, lateral grip, front grip, more rear downforce. Of course, with this car, it's symmetrical, so you don't have right side downforce. You don't have any of that.
Right.
So to me, it's just like at the casino, roll of the dice.
Yep.
And to me, we got the good luck of the roll of the dice 3 times last year, and so far we're playing a game of craps, and we are losing bad.
Yep. Hey, and people go on very bad runs on the crap tables, and they go on very good runs on the crap tables. So, like you said, it's hit or miss, and it's just going to be really, really interesting to see, especially this weekend. Like, we're talking about taking notes from last season, a completely year removed, and hopefully putting them towards, what would be a good showing this weekend with Kyle. Who knows? We won't know until that those four Goodyear tires hit the pavement and we know exactly what we're looking at.
And I mean, from last year, we didn't even have to. We rolled off of the truck fast as crap.
Right.
They unloaded us. Kyle went to practice. I think he said they made 3 or 4 minor adjustments, and then they cut course with the track changing. They start in the day and they end towards the evening time. The track changes, temperatures, things like that. Of course, you're going to make those small adjustments, tire pressure, chassis. But he said, throughout that whole race, just the smallest adjustments. And he was completely happy with that car from the time they rolled it off the truck to the time that checkered flag fell. He was so happy with that car. So I feel like with those, RCR probably should have, if they didn't already, that car, when it won the race, should have went back to their center, their race shop, and went, okay, so we use this shocks on this setup, we use this tire, transaxle was here, chassis was here, blah blah blah, all those aspects, and take it and run it through tech. See where all your numbers are at. Ballpark right there. Put all your numbers, your car that you're taking to that racetrack, put all your numbers right there and adjust from there.
Right. And also taking into consideration if the weather is the same, that all plays a huge part into how that car actually feels when it comes out of that air-conditioned hauler and then unloaded into the garage area. All the cars react differently to it. I'm going to interrupt 1 second. Let me let this dog out real quick, bud.
Yes, sir.
All right, come here. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, I mean, we have all these guys at Gateway. So what happened? We have had nothing but brake rotor issues the last 2 races here at Gateway. How do we fix that?
Tell the drivers to stop being so damn hard on the brakes. I mean, there are drivers that are capable of finishing the race, right? They've all got the same brake package. Now, it doesn't surprise me that we saw Noah Gragson struggle with his brakes. The dude's an aggressive driver. He's a very aggressive driver. He's talented at what he does. but he's got to learn that not all tracks are built the same, and these brakes will fail you.
Some of
I,
some of the racetracks are harder on some parts of the car than other racetracks are.
correct.
But here's my thing. So, and I know the difference because is Gateway's what, a mile and a half?
I think it's a mile. Yeah, mile and a quarter maybe.
We go to Martinsville every year. How heavy? And we see those brake rotors glow, and we know these guys are heavy on the brakes. Why are we not having brake failures at a place like Martinsville and we are at Gateway?
Would it be because the speeds are a lot slower, and so the brakes aren't going through as strenuous of a transition between straightaway speed and corner speed, where you're having to slow these heavy cars down? Would that be fair to say?
I feel like it would be fair. I mean, Martinsville, we're running 130, 135 at the top down the straightaways, but that's still over 500 laps now at Gateway. We see a lot of the guys only really using a lot of brake in turns 1 and 2, and that's just because of how deep and how narrow that corner is.
Correct.
But with Martinsville, where these rotors are glowing for 450 laps. Okay, so when they get hot, you're pressing the brake, and the rotor, when it gets hot, all it is expanding and thinning out.
Correct.
Maybe it's just too much heat getting into the corner at Gateway, or to the fact that they're having to put so much pressure. Maybe it's the heat plus the pressure is just blowing the rotors.
I think it's because you're having to slow down more at a faster racetrack, and that's why some of the brakes are struggling to keep up. Whereas even though we're talking about 120, 130 miles an hour at Martinsville, those brakes are still not having to slow down a car as much as they're having to slow down at like a Gateway. And I just went and looked it up. It is a mile and a quarter. Your back stretch is almost 2,000 feet. Your front stretch is almost 2,000 feet. That's almost a half mile of straightaway speed compared to baby numbers at Martinsville.
Fair enough.
So I think that's probably one of the things that's going to play the biggest factor as far as the brake failures go, mainly because I can't really come up with any other reason.
Would it be safe to say that maybe a different driving technique at this racetrack, when I say this racetrack, talking about Gateway, would a different driving style be more appropriate? So instead of waiting until the end of pit road to mash on the brake, can we let out of the throttle for 100 or 200 feet and then apply the brake?
Absolutely. There are a million things that every individual driver can adjust in his own racing style to take care of his equipment. We've seen professional drivers across all motorsports make necessary adjustments. We saw Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. with the crap tires they had, the same crap tires they had at Bristol. Everybody else, they managed to take care of them. And they finished the race clean, and they were the beneficiaries from everybody else struggling. I believe every single driver across the board can make the necessary adjustments to take care of their equipment. Now you're gonna have your equipment failures. That's completely out of the driver's.
And you always will. I mean, that's just a part of racing. Not all the parts are always going to handle and keep up at 110%.
Correct. So I think as far as drivers taking care of their equipment, getting the feedback from their crew chiefs and their team owners, and hey, Noah, I'll use Noah as an example since he was the one that took the hard hit last year at Gateway. Look, whether you need to get out of the throttle earlier down the end of the straightaway and less on the brakes, if you need to run higher instead of running so aggressively low.
Yeah. What about a wider arc? Let off
absolutely
150, 200 foot earlier from the throttle. Get into the brakes, but use a higher arc. And who knows what that higher arc. Now, I've only played NASCAR Heat 5, and it's a whole lot different than driving one of these cars.
Right.
But in there at Gateway, you can run a high arc into turn 1 and still turn that like Kyle Busch was doing last year. Correct. When he had to run off the top side.
Correct.
Right there at the middle of the corner, was able to dive down and run off the bottom of the corner. So we know it can happen, but the other thing is you can't do it every lap, especially if you got somebody to your inside.
Right.
In which, they have to make adjustments, and not just to the car, but to the driving style, because you'll have people trying to pass you from the back. You've got people you're trying to pass, people on your outside, people on your inside. So this racetrack to me, it's produced really good races the last 2 races. It's always a track that I look forward to. Granted, it's hot, it's slick, and then it cools down. And when the track starts to change, it starts to speed up.
Right.
And to me, it starts to get more antsy, more dicey. And that's what I love Gateway. I really hope they don't take it off the schedule. This has become one of my favorite races to watch during the year.
Absolutely. Love me some Gateway racing. We're out in California. Is that correct?
Gateway? No, St. Louis.
St. Louis. Oh my goodness. Where am I at? St. Louis, Missouri.
Different side of the country, buddy.
Yeah. And you got, you're in the Midwest. You've got a ton of sponsors out there with everybody. And they always put on a good show at that track. Like, if you're not glued to the TV at Gateway, I don't know what you're doing, right? Like, the chess match itself is absolutely incredible to see play out.
And there's so many guys that have speed going to Gateway too, but we see it at the end of every race. The pit strategy is always what helps whoever wins the race. Look at Logano, look at Kyle Busch, the pit strategy. But, and it all starts in qualifying too. If you don't qualify good, you don't get a good pit box selection, and that could screw you.
Right.
You could have the speed, but with a crappy pit box, there's your day.
Yep.
And I feel like Gateway is one of those, and it's because of the different driving styles. Turn 1 and 2 is different from 3 and 4. The long straightaways, the pit road, the starting in the daytime and ending at dusk or under the lights. Like, this racetrack to me, and that's why it's my favorite, because there's so many of these variables that come into it instead of, okay, it's a concrete track and it's a little cool outside, so we're going to rubber down and we're just going to see who's fastest. To me, that's boring.
Yeah.
Let's get out. Let's add more variables.
I think the really good thing, I think a lot more tracks need to start looking into this, is the start times, and maybe even adjusting a few more races to Saturday night after Xfinity, so it gets that double header in there for all those fans there on Saturday. But when you go from a 6 o'clock start, track's hot, track's slick, and then 8 o'clock rolls around, by the time stage 2 is starting, you've got a grippy racetrack, and you've got a lot more racers with the opportunity to do well because their cars come around.
And I noticed that a lot with the schedule too. So we have like Richmond, the second Richmond race this year. It's scheduled to go green at 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday night.
See, I don't understand the Sunday night.
Most of the night. So we only have actually 3 night races this year.
Okay.
So you have Daytona.
Right.
We have Bristol in the fall.
Charlotte.
As far as Saturday night. Saturday night races. I think there's one, I believe it's Martinsville the week before. It's the cutoff race for the championship 4.
Okay.
We have more night races, but a lot of people have to work on Monday, dude.
Right.
And
that's what I'm saying about it being on Saturday night. Might benefit NASCAR more if
they want a night race, it needs to go back where back in the day, NASCAR, all your night races used to be on a Saturday night.
Right. And
your day races would be mid-Sunday, and most of the time it was after church.
Right.
So the fact that they're like, and then now, well, we can't get all of these viewers and okay, well then run the Xfinity race, get them the hell off the track, and let's get the cup cars out there, or go back to doing what you guys were doing. 2017, for example, when Kyle Busch swept the weekend at Bristol, we ran trucks Thursday night, we ran Xfinity Friday night, and we ran Cup Saturday night.
Yep.
Why can't we do that anymore? Or run the trucks in Xfinity in a doubleheader on a Friday night, and then run the Cup Series race on Saturday?
Yep. Agreed. All the way across. I agree. I don't think, as far as tradition goes, I don't think too many people are married to the whole Sunday race thing. I think that's just noise. If people are upset that, oh, NASCAR Cup's supposed to be on Sunday, shut up. Like I'm over the meaningless complaining, right? Make it on Saturday night.
Oh, I missed the race. It was on Saturday. It was supposed to be on Sunday. I don't know how many comments I have seen on social media. I didn't know it was supposed to be at 7:30 on Sunday night. No, typically a 7:30 start time is a Saturday night. Right. But you also have the option to turn the damn TV on to see when the schedule is. And most 95% of people in the world today have access to a cell phone or a tablet. So it's not that hard to Google. Us NASCAR, if you're a NASCAR fan and don't have the NASCAR app, are you even a fan?
Right.
If you can't open up the NASCAR app and tell me what time this weekend's race starts, don't watch.
Right.
Like,
Or don't no, you can watch, stop complaining.
Well, okay, thank you. Better wording. If you're not going to take the time to be better prepared for the sport that you say you love watching,
Right.
then don't complain.
Right.
Now, I know, like I said, I complain a lot, but it's a lot of the stuff that's small nitpicking. And I mean, you have yours that you nitpick, and we talk about that on here, but I'm not on social media blowing everybody up like with the whole Larson thing. I will say right now, it's going to piss my wife off too. Without a doubt, when Kyle Busch retires, I will be wearing 5 gear.
Okay.
I will be wearing Kyle Larson t-shirts, hats, whatever.
Right.
Larson has grown on me. Like I said, my first race was 2017, the Bristol night race. And since then, I liked 2018 Chicagoland. Man, Kyle Busch, the Kyle and Kyle show, that just every time these guys get together, 1 and 2, it's always an awesome race up front.
Yep.
And I'm one of these guys that I don't just go out and choose a team or a driver or a player lightly. Like,
Right.
I've got to take time to say, okay, so is this guy even worth my time? Is this guy even worth watching? Or is this team even worth watching? I'm like everybody else. I like to win.
Right.
A lot of the reason, I'm not saying a lot of the reason, but some of the reason I'm a Kyle Busch fan. Because I liked getting ready and getting pumped on Sunday, knowing damn well 85% chance Kyle's going to win the race on Sunday.
Yep.
It's the same thing with football. Being an LSU fan, I know we just came off 2 10-win seasons. We haven't won a natty since 2019. It's coming. It's coming. I'm a Bengals fan. Granted, we're going through a slump right now, but we were just in a Super Bowl.
Yep.
So, I mean,
I'm not going to talk about my NFL team. My NFL team's a fucking circus, and I'm sick of it.
Oh, you're a Cowboys fan.
So sick of that fucking team, bro.
You got the Houston Oilers, or not the Oilers. Whoo! I went old school. Who is it down? The Texans.
The Texans, but they haven't done anything in 22 years. So
no, with that C.J. Stroud and whoever they have this year. I know, getting off topic. Look for Houston Texans to be in the Super Bowl this year. I'm calling it right now.
Ooh, interesting.
February, the Houston Texans will be the number 1 seed going into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I with their health pending, if they stay healthy, they could absolutely make a run in the AFC this year. As far as CJ Stroud, I think he got a lot of that the rookie momentum from everything just being hyped up. A lot of what Dak Prescott went through in 2016, where they rattled off 13 wins and nobody could really figure it out until they got to the playoffs. But I think CJ is going to have some growing pains this season. I think teams are going to be better prepared for him. And now a lot of the AFC, I believe it's AFC South that the Texans are in. Those teams are going to be better prepared for the Texans when those division games come around.
See, and I hate it because I would love to say that the Bengals would go to the Super Bowl, because if you look at it, first year that Joe Burrow is in the NFL, he gets hurt. We don't really do so good. The next year he comes back from injury. We annihilate the entire NFL as well as the AFC, North and South, and we go to a Super Bowl. Granted, we should have won, no thanks to Eli Apple. But then we just come out of another season where Joe Burrow was injured, couldn't play, and now he's going to start this season. So since he's going to be up there with the rest of those guys, it's always that stuff when it comes to sports. But I'm like the next person. I like winning. I analyze teams. I analyze drivers. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I love some of these guys like John Hunter Nemechek when he raced for KBM. Dominant down there.
Yep.
Doesn't need to be in a cup car. Does not need to be in a cup car. There's those guys that I'm like, I'd love to root for you guys, just not in cup because you guys can't drive. Right. It's just one of those things. So yes, I will Larson when Kyle Busch retires, if Larson is still driving the 5, or after this whole ordeal, if he doesn't change his mind and go straight to IndyCar,
right.
Yeah, I will definitely be on board with Kyle Larson after Busch retires. Only after Kyle retires.
And talking about favorite drivers and picking a new driver when yours retires, that was a very interesting time for me when Casey Kane retired from Cup, because I had a driver for 15 years. Like, That was weird, bro. Like, and then I think Matty D got the 95 car out from Casey when Casey had to retire. And I watched a couple of his races and I looked up some of his stuff and I was like, okay, you know, it's Matty D's got a little something, something, you know. So I got me some Matty D gear as his career started taking off. Um, Unfortunately for Matty D, he wasn't able to get that first win like we all thought he probably was going to get. And then, you know, he made a kind of a political stance there at the end of 22 or at the end of 21 that probably didn't help his case much. But the dude could race, and I was happy I had a driver for a few years. Now I got even more lucky coming around to 2311. I wasn't a 2311 fan in 2021 when Bubba Wallace and them boys got going. I was a Matty D fan. And so Bubba Wallace wasn't even really on my radar. I didn't dislike Bubba Wallace, but Matty D was my guy. When Matty D lost his ride, I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs like, well, who the hell am I?
And this is 2 drivers in less than 3 years, bro.
Man, I was going through it, man. So, you know, I kind of noticed the whole momentum picking up with Denny and Michael. And, you know, I was a Bubba Wallace fan there. And then Tyler Reddick joined forces. And I was just like, I don't know who this kid is. Started looking up his stuff. He rattled off Xfinity championships. And he was in contention to win. Right. He was in contention to win with RCR every weekend. So I was like, man, this Tyler Reddick kid's kind of cool. I think I'm going to jump on this horse a little bit. And the rest is history, man. I got all his die casts. I got all this signed stuff from these guys. And I'm a 2311 fan. I love it.
And it goes, I've not gone through that yet. I've only been a Kyle Busch fan since halfway through 2016. So almost by the time Kyle retires, I'll say about 12 or 13 years being a Kyle Busch fan.
Right.
I know when Junior retired in 2017, half of NASCAR had to figure out who the hell they were going to root for anymore.
Right.
And a lot of those guys, we saw them hop on the Chase Elliott bandwagon. Unfortunately, I'm not taking anything away from Chase. He
definitely has an inflated fan base because of Junior, I think.
I think, honestly, I don't think it's because of Junior. I think it's got a lot to do with his daddy.
Oh, okay.
Austin Bill from Dawsonville. Right. So I think some of it maybe have to do with Junior. I feel like a lot of these guys have a big head because of Bill. And just because who his daddy is and who he's related to. I feel like that settled down just a little bit, but not enough to be comfortable with. Because when I go to the races, you know, I'm so used to hearing Kyle Busch and this and that. 9 times out of 10, it's a Chase Elliott fan.
How interesting.
Now, I'm not trying to call Chase out. I'm not trying to start in a pub.
This has nothing to do with Chase Elliott. For those listening, this has nothing to do with Chase Elliott. It's the fan bases we're discussing.
And it's not, and I'm not even dogging on the fan base, but it's these guys that I think it got worse after the championship in 2020 because everybody was like, Chase is the greatest to ever do it. And this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll see. Now, when Chase won the title in 2020, I'm definitely like, okay, so this kid, you know, he's driving his butt off. He's doing all the right things. There was some calls like the year he won the title, there was a lot of controversy with that previous race at Martinsville with the Jackman coming off the wall too soon.
Right.
There's a lot of people that feel like he should have been penalized and shouldn't have even been in Phoenix competing for that title. But after the 2020 title, I feel like, I'm not going to say incompetence, but just the vulgarness and the
blind hate.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. I feel like a lot of that from Chase Elliott fans, and they put Chase on a pedestal like he's the god of NASCAR. And a lot of us fans,
Golden Boy is what they were calling him.
Yes. And I feel like a lot of us fans feel like that the fan base could tone it down just a little bit. Grant, and I will be the second to say Chase can drive. He has earned where he is at.
Absolutely.
He is in with a good stable. He's a good driver. He's got good people behind him. He's an awesome person to sit. I went and got Chase's autograph. Of course, not for myself. My dad's a Chase Elliott fan. And to take him to the racetrack is embarrassing. No, not really. But some of these fans, and I will say some of these Chase Elliott fans they're humble. They know where this kid comes from. They know they they know how to act at these races. And then you get the guys that what is it, shortly, I still see these guys wearing it, the Chase Elliott with the bird that says Kyle Busch on their shirt. I'm sure you've
Right.
seen a lot of those at the racetrack.
Right.
Or the Chase Elliott fans that say my Busch is better than yours.
Right.
And a lot of it, it's not even Chase Elliott fan bases. There is a lot.
It's
I know.
sprinkled throughout the sport, no matter
Yes,
what.
yes. And I'm sure, and as a Kyle Busch fan, I am not saying that us as a fan base, Rowdy Nation, is perfect at all, because you still have those butt heads that say, okay, well, you know what? My Kyle or my driver is better than yours in every aspect and every way, which is not necessarily true. And like I said, I will stand behind Kyle 110% until the day he says, okay, I'm hanging it up. But I feel like that's why Kyle has calmed down a lot. But the fan bases, I feel like, and not just Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, but fan bases in general, is why a lot of these drivers get a bad rep, is because of their fan base.
Right.
And
that's
it's
across all sports. Let's call that what it is, because, and we'll jump over to NFL for just a moment. The Cowboy fan base, you know me, you've gotten to know me over the last few months. I'm as unbiased of a fan towards sports as it comes, and that's magnified with the Cowboys, because I know exactly what the Cowboys are going to give me every single year.
and I've just learned to deal with the Cowboys, because eventually, you know, when the play, they're like, yeah, we them boys, playoff
Right.
come. Where them boys at?
They're at home in Cancun. That's where they're at.
So my biggest, I think the biggest problem I have with the fan base in the NFL is Kansas City.
The bandwagon.
No, that and the whole Taylor Swift thing. I've
Well,
got nothing against her being at the games or dating Travis Kelce or whatever, but I'm like, we're here to watch football, and every 10 seconds they've got the camera on Taylor.
Now I'm gonna cut you off there real quick, because I do disagree with that. They actually ran the numbers. Somebody put together the numbers. She's only getting about a minute of screen time per game. It seems like a lot, because the camera will pan to her after a Travis Kelce play or a Kelce touchdown. I think a couple times they went to Mama Kelce when Jason Kelce, and you know, all that. Like, it's not Taylor Swift. It's not. Let's call it what it is real quick, because I think it's really important.
I feel like it's the fans that are putting it out there. It's not necessarily the people. Like I said, it's not Taylor, but it's Taylor.
Well, let's also add what it's doing for dads and daughters, because there are these little boys and girls, and there's boys too, not just daughters. There are sons and daughters sitting with their dads and families watching football now, because they get excited to see Taylor Swift on the screen. I think that's really
more
cool.
Fans into the sport.
I think that's really cool, and I think Taylor Swift is probably a good person. She seems to do a lot of good things for a lot of people. So as far as the whole Kansas City Taylor Swift thing, I think it's important for a lot of us to look at some of the things that are more important than just being annoyed that Taylor Swift is on the TV.
And I feel like with Kansas City, for me, it's not just this last year, but since Patrick Mahomes has come in, Mahomes had that, I'm not say has that ego. Granted, he's good. He's not Tom Brady. He's good. But I feel like his ego, he lets all that. And then you had his wife and his brother that were constantly on the sidelines doing the TikTok crap and all that. I feel like a lot of that is the reason why Kansas City, that fan base is like, oh, you're just hating on Mahomes because this and that. No, like, when I turn the TV on, it's nothing against Taylor Swift either. When I turn the TV on to watch an NFL game, I want to watch the NFL. I want to watch football. I don't want to watch Patrick Mahomes' wife and brother twerk and scissor on the sideline.
Correct. I can 1,000 agree with that. I don't understand why his wife is getting all the camera time. I don't understand why his brother is getting all the camera time. That seemed very silly to me. It does make sense to me putting Taylor Swift up there. She is the biggest name in pop culture. She's the biggest name. She's probably bigger than LeBron James.
And the fact that she's up there now, the games, you see her wearing a Kelce jersey, or she's wearing that trench coat Travis Kelce jersey that I thought was just really cool looking.
Right.
But she, anytime something's happening, she's paying attention to the game. She's cheering. She's up doing something. I just feel And like I said, it wasn't Taylor, but I feel like it's the fans that have put that out there that put a bad taste in other people's mouth about Kansas City.
Right.
And it's the fan base because of these things. It's not particularly those things that are causing the issue, but it's the fan base with those things that are causing the issue.
Right. Right. And it's just one of those things where at the end of the day, we're going to have to scoff and get over it and move on, because whether we like it or not, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are an item, and Kansas City is the biggest name in football right now, and Taylor Swift is the biggest name in entertainment. So, you know, it's one of those things, like we said before, if we don't like it, we can turn it off.
And everybody has that power. The home button on your Roku remote, the power button, change the damn channel. If you're sick of it, just change the damn channel. Don't continue
Right.
to watch there to continue to let it piss you off.
Right.
And then to the point that I've seen videos of people, Taylor Swift, because they seen him on the damn TV for the third or fourth time, and these people are punching TVs and sending remotes, and I'm like, bro, you know how dumb that is?
That's garbage. That's clown behavior, and I'll call them out. I'll call every single one of them out. And you and I haven't been able to experience a football season together as buddies, but you're going to see me call out people on the NFL pages, because the same with NASCAR. If you act like an ignorant fool, a clown, I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you out, and I don't care, because a lot of the 99% of the hate that comes from people's mouths is just probably because they're sick of their own life, that they have to project their shit on the internet. I've seen it.
I feel like a lot of it is butthurt fans, to be completely honest. And it's not just football. It's soccer. It's baseball. It's NASCAR. It's everywhere. Butthurt fans because their driver, their teams are not doing as well as they normally do.
100.
Like I said, I'm Kyle Busch fan. This season's a little depressing because
but
you're
not out bashing other fans and other teams.
Exactly. And I'm sure you see a bunch, you respond to some of my comments on these pages. So I know you see some of my comments on these pages that are like, I commented on something in a Kyle Larson fan page group because I follow those guys and to see what those fans think about what's going on.
Right.
Not just with the waiver, but, stuff that happened back in the season with, preparing for the All-Star race, preparing to come to Indy, 2 or 3 months ahead of time.
Right. It's intriguing.
And it is. And somebody mentioned something about the waiver, and I commented on it and said, I think the post said, why in the hell is NASCAR taking so long? And I had mentioned, NASCAR is taking this ample time to make sure that they don't make the wrong decision.
Right.
And I've got people that I'm like, and I put my 2 cents in on why, I hate it or don't like it, but why I think or don't think that the waiver should be put through, or, like what we talked about here. And I've got people that are like, tell me you don't like Kyle Larson without telling me you don't like Kyle Larson. And I'm like, it's not the fact that I don't like Kyle, and I'm just admitting on this show that I'm going to buy the merch, bro.
Right. It has nothing to do with Kyle Larson. It has everything to do with the rule book, and that's what we're
Exactly.
discussing.
And from a fan perspective who also does these things, the podcasts and media side of it too with y'all, I can't just look at it from a biased fan perspective. You
Right.
have to be able to look at it instead of looking from the inside out. You have to be looking from the outside in.
Correct.
And that's a whole as a sport. It's pretty much saying, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not trying to be. You put a glass of wine in a glass box that you can see from all 4 sides. It's red wine. I can see from the inside out that that's red wine. But what does it taste like? Only the wine knows what it tastes like.
Right.
It could taste like white wine, but that's the same. It's the same concept. You have to be able to. Okay, I see that is Kyle Larson, but on the other side of it, what's going on behind the scenes? Why are these things going this way? Why is this being said? Why is this being done? Why does this taste like this? Pretty much. Okay, I see that it's red wine. I see that it's Kyle Larson. Why does it taste like he's not getting a waiver? Why does it taste like white wine, but it looks like red wine?
Why am I getting notes of other types of wine when this is the wine that you're displaying to me?
Yeah, why does this taste like a Chardonnay when it should be a Cabernet?
Correct.
It's one of those things. You have to look at it as a whole, as a fan base, and I'm not happy. Speaking of baseball, LSU, we went to the College World Series last year and dominated in Omaha, bro. We were not a mediocre team. We're a pretty good team. We made it to the SEC title game. We lost 3-4 to Tennessee. That was expected, and we knocked off South Carolina. Who expected that? 12-11 in 10 innings. So, but you look at it as a whole, Tennessee's got a hell of a good team. I don't much care for Tennessee, but you have to put the props out there, bro. They can play.
Right.
It's the same thing. A lot of drivers hate Kyle Busch, and I've seen it. I don't like
he's
Kyle
better
Busch.
than them.
Okay, I don't like Kyle Busch. I hate Kyle Busch, but I will not deny the fact that the man can drive. It's the same fact. I can't stand Denny Hamlin. I can't stand that man. But I will not take away the fact that man can drive a race car and put the damn thing in victory lane.
Consistently.
And it's looking out to looking in. You can have your dislikes. You can have, I will say, I don't want to say hates. But yes, some people will have their hates. Some people will have their dislikes. But you got to look at it from the other side of the fence. And a lot of people don't do that. And that's where a lot of these clowns, per se, that's where they pop up on Facebook, because it's a one-sided conversation for them.
It's a blind hate when people aren't capable of having a discussion. You and I have disagreed on multiple things, and not even NASCAR, but things outside of NASCAR. But you know what? We're adult enough to sit down, have the conversation, whether we agree to disagree or not. We never lost respect for one another.
No, we're still good friends, and we have different point of views on different things. But that is I'm going to take a quote out of Trump's book. I'm not trying to be political, but that's what makes America great, bro. We can agree to disagree.
Correct.
And I feel that's why a lot of America, what's wrong with America right now, and it's not just as a country, the people at sports, NASCAR, people at the racetrack, per se, flipping off Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, screw this person, screw that, or hating on Dallas or this. If people would just sit down and have a conversation, why do you feel that way?
Right.
And not in a therapy type, not in an environment like that, but sit down like me and you have had on Facebook. Okay, here's my point of view. This is why I feel this way. This is why I see. Okay, now why do you feel like that? Why do you feel like, we can agree to disagree and still go on to be friends and respect each other and just have a good time.
Correct. And
a lot of people, and I feel like 99% of the United States in every aspect has lost sight of that.
Correct.
And if we would just get back to that, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's going to the damn grocery store, and it's like my wife, she likes Hellman's I can't stand mayonnaise. I like Miracle Whip, but she buys it anyways. So I mean, it's the same concept.
Right.
We just got to respect each other's wishes, feelings. We would be so much better off.
I don't mind when somebody comes at me with a different perspective, because you know what? I'm about to learn something. And when I'm going to learn something, that means I'm going to be able to help others understand similar situations moving forward. This isn't just about me. This is about the people around me. I want to have other people's perspectives. I want to know why Denny Hamlin has such a large fan base. Denny Hamlin is part owner of the team that I love with a passion. I'm still not a Denny Hamlin fan, but I respect what the dude is doing. I mean, he's building an empire over there in Concord, or wherever the headquarters they just opened up last week. He is building an empire, and he's not messing around either.
No.
And you got to have respect for it, because you're either going to hate NASCAR more, or either you respect it and just enjoy what's coming, because them boys at 2311, they're coming, and they're coming fast.
I would honestly, within the next 4 years, I would not hesitate to say that at least Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick both have one championship apiece in the next 4 years.
I get chills
with the help of Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan can't really bring a lot to the racing side of it, but
right.
He's been in the NBA Finals. He's won rings. He's won championships. He can't bring the racing side of it to him, but he can bring the mentality. Yes, the mindset and the mentality. And I feel that's why Bubba's doing as good as he is right now. Because I'm not trying to bring racism into this, and I know a lot of people will take it like this, but Bubba Wallace being a man of color, a white man like Denny Hamlin coming in trying to give him that mindset, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but almost makes it easier on Bubba when you have a man of color coming to you to give you the same mentality that Denny Hamlin. I'm not trying to make it about race. I'm not trying to be racist at all.
But naturally, when you have somebody of the same background bringing that kind of information to you, maybe Bubba takes to it differently. And
I mean, look at what Bubba just went through as a whole in the sport just a couple years ago.
Right.
I don't think Jordan went through it. He went through it,
right.
but he didn't go through it to the extent with the media and everything it is today that Bubba Wallace did.
Right.
So I feel like that's what has made Bubba Wallace better. Denny Hamlin has given his 2 pieces, but Jordan has been where Bubba has been.
Correct.
And to have that person with that background come to you, it's easier to take the information and the advice and everything that's coming to you from somebody who's done it from that specific background. And
Absolutely.
And I have the utmost respect for Jordan, the utmost respect for 23XI. Denny Hamlin, like I said, I can't stand him, but the utmost respect for that man to be able to do what he does and split his time between 2 daughters. I don't think he's remarried just yet.
No, still girlfriend.
Okay, so he has a girlfriend. He has 2 children. He has a race team that he races for and one that he built as an owner. So he's got to have a lot of time and a lot of good things going for him, and he does. And that just says a lot about Denny Hamlin, especially whether he's on the racetrack and he's winning races consistently, or he's off the racetrack helping Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace get top 5s, top 10s, and wins for them. We saw Tyler Reddick has already got 1 win at Talladega this year. Bubba Wallace, it's not a matter of if, it's when.
He's going to get
Bubba
one.
Wallace has got 2. Granted, they both came in 2 separate car numbers. That doesn't make a difference in that argument.
Would it be fair to say that was Bubba Wallace's 23 car with a 45 sticker on the side of the door?
Yeah, because when they did that, the crew members didn't remain the same. Ty Gibbs took over that, and they sent. I believe they put Bubba Wallace in that 45 because they knew he had more experience with this car, and they were still competing for the owners' championship.
Correct.
So they put all their eggs in the best basket that they could.
Absolutely.
And they took all the best people and put it on that team. Now, don't get me wrong, that 23 team, they had a lot of guys over there that were able. We saw Ty Gibbs rattle off some top 5s, top 10s, top 15s. And that has a lot to do with the driver also, but it has a lot to do with the guys that back you up on the racetrack and in the shop.
Absolutely.
So
it's a team sport.
It is. And without a team, it's silly. I will take it back to, for those of you that have ever seen the first Cars movie, they talked about Lightning McQueen going through 4 crew chiefs in a single season.
Yep.
And him saying that he's a one-man crew. The sport doesn't happen with a one-man crew.
And
without a pit crew and a crew chief,
we saw his team turn on him when he started saying those things. I know it's a cartoon, but I don't need a team.
The lesson it transfers over. It's a team sport. It's like going back to the NFL or college. If the quarterback pisses off their offensive line, 9 times out of 10, that offensive line is going to teach that quarterback a lesson because they're just going to step to the side and let him take that lick.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with the race team. If I feel like that's where a lot of the Kyle Busch problems came from before him and Adam Stevens separated.
Right.
Was the fact that Kyle wanted to make all these changes, Adam wasn't agreeing to it, and they were just butting heads too much. And Kyle said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." And guess what? We weren't able to.
And now he's in a completely different situation and scenario.
He is. So it is what it is. It's a team sport. You can see it back here. This 215 speed limit sign. I've got numerous drivers on it, but the last year that Kyle was with Gibbs, I've got Ben Bayshore's autograph and the whole entire pit crew because it's a team effort.
Right.
I'm going to get Kyle's autograph because it's my driver, but he also has people that back him up that help him do that. And that's the cool thing about being able to go to these race shops, is because you get to meet the people behind the scenes that don't show and don't get recognized at the racetrack.
And to be fair, NASCAR is doing a better job about giving the teams lineups. You're getting to see the Jackmans, you're getting to see the tire changers, you're getting to see the crew chiefs. These guys are getting their names and faces on TV now, and I think that's really important for the sport.
And the pit crew challenge, I have to condone and applaud NASCAR, man, for the pit crew challenge, because to me that added a whole nother aura to the all-star race.
Right.
I know they've done it the last 2 or 3 years. But to me, that just showcases the all-star race. They can go out and qualify and do whatever, and they can make adjustments. The driver can win the race from the back.
Right.
But these pit crew have a hand in it too, and to be able to have them go out and showcase the speed that they've got, to showcase what they do and what they can do, I applaud NASCAR for bringing in and enlightening everybody on everything that goes on behind the scenes.
Yep.
And those guys are awesome, because a lot of those jobs aren't easy.
Nope.
Were RCR Fan Day, they had the pit stop demonstrations for this next gen car. Austin Dillon's tire, the friend he's got on TV, I can't remember if it's the tire chain or not, tire carrier, I think it is, or the Jackman.
Yeah.
He let me go hold one of those filler cans, the big cans they use the dump cans.
35 pounds.
Hold it up with fuel in it. It is 90 pounds completely full.
90 with the fuel. Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God. Like I'm like, okay, so you're just walking over the car, plugging it in, coming back, no. It takes a strong ass man to stand there for 14 seconds with 100 pounds over your head, filling up a race car.
And we'll switch that to person, because I believe in the Xfinity series, there's a female gas person now.
I believe that, yes, gas, and I believe there's a female tire changer.
Right.
On one of the Xfinity teams. And congratulations to them, because I'm all for a woman can do as much as a man can do.
Now, I will say that there are things that women can do that men can't, and there are things that men can do that women probably can't do as well as the other.
And a lot of it, but when these guys, they're not just tire changers and gas guys. They're professional athletes.
Right. They're
not out driving the race car, but you know how much effort and how much life it takes out of them to rush over, do a 4-tire stop, tear off, fuel, chassis adjustment, all this stuff in 12 seconds. Granted, you got 2 tire changers, a tire carrier, and a jackman and a fuel man. I think it's a 5-man stop now, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 is what's allowed over the wall. Now they've got 3 guys behind, 3 or 4 guys behind the wall, handing them stuff and kind of delegating what's going on over
trying
the wall,
to catch those tires that are coming and roll the tires back out to make it easier.
Which, don't even get me started on the tire roll. I don't understand how so many tires are rolling into the next pit box and nobody's getting penalties. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and it really pisses me off, because again, being a Kyle Busch fan, I think it was this past weekend we had to start at the rear again because we had an uncontrolled tire, and I'm like, where's the other 2 or 3 penalties for the other guys that are uncontrolled tires?
Right. That's so confusing to me.
And I'm like, and then they tried to do it again, and instead of calling it an uncontrolled tire, it was an equipment violation.
Right.
And I'm like,
it's those gray areas that don't make sense, and then we got to live with it, right?
And to where are we? Holy shit, closing on 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut you off at $1.55, bud.
Yeah, we'll do this to revert back to the Kyle Larson situation. It's the same way. There's too many gray areas. When it used to be back in the sport, everything was black, white. There was no read in between the lines, no loopholes, no way to get around this. It was black, white. You're either right or wrong.
Correct.
That's it. And to me, that's the way NASCAR needs to go back to. Certain rules shouldn't apply to certain drivers, and to me, I feel like it does. And I'm not saying it's favoritism, and we talked about the money grabbing, but to me, it's a business decision. But they also need to let it play out, because what happens when these guys, who's a good guy right now, Harrison Burton, let's just say for shits and giggles, Harrison Burton rattles off a win at the Brickyard 400 and rattles off a win at the Southern 500. Why are we going to penalize or whatever punishment or something that comes from one of those teams? It's got to be good for business for one of those guys to win a race, right?
Right.
So why are we playing favorites? That's where I'm at. But
it's a product of the system, man. The favoritism shines its ugly head when somebody that brings in the most money is affecting the sport. So,
and the system needs to just be a straight arrow, no curves, slow down, speed up. It needs to be black, white, straight shot forward, and be done.
Wouldn't that be a perfect life?
And I mean, I'm not asking for a perfect life, and I'm not asking for a perfect sports
but consistency
event, but consistency is where it needs to be, because right now NASCAR is all over the freaking place, and I can see why so many fans are pissed off.
Right.
But with that being said, we will continue this tomorrow night on the Hub.
We got the Hub tomorrow. We're previewing Gateway. We're going to go through, I don't remember. Do we have trucks or just Xfinity? And
we have trucks. Big
Okay.
announcement, actually, to give you guys something to fill on. Clint Boyer will be driving the number 7 truck at Nashville Super Speedway. I'm excited about that because it's going to be under the lights. Clint always puts on a show when he's in the lower series, man, and I'm excited. But we will get to this. Yeah, we will get to this tomorrow. Don, buddy, it's been great catching up. It's been great talking racing, man. Guys, this is Motor Racing Podcast. Don, have a good night, buddy.